Well, rarely has one of my sermons generated so many practical conversations as the one I shared with you last week and when we kicked off this series called Best Christmas Ever. Last week's message was, of course, about gift giving, and if you were here, I imagine, experienced it as a little bit thought-provoking because out of all these conversations, I learned a few things about our church. I wrote 4 of them down here. Number 1, I learned that routines are powerful. Because what I found is that most of the ways that people have been gift giving over the past few years is the exact same way that they've been gift giving for the last 20 years. That they had gone into a routine and they just do it the same way year after year after year, and they never really had a thought-provoking conversation to say, could it be different? Some people call these routines, these days I call them ruts. You just kind of get into a mode and have trouble getting out of it. But it was a great conversation. Number 2, you guys really latched on to this idea of deciding as a family or as a couple who's been meaningful to you this year. And there are going to be a lot of people all around Northwest Indiana and beyond who are going to be blessed uniquely this year. Not someone you'd have to bless again next year, but you're going to give them a gift because together you decided this is who we're going to honor with a gift to show we truly care. I think that's awesome. That's worth everything. Number 3, more than a few of you have a fairness streak inside of you. You cannot imagine treating one of your children even a little bit differently from the rest, or one of your grandchildren even a little bit differently from the rest, even if given an arc of time where you could treat one of them uniquely this year and the other one uniquely next year. You like fairness, don't you? Yeah, some of you do. I hope you don't regret that, honestly. I hope you don't miss out on a chance to be extravagant to someone in a season because of where they uniquely are or what they uniquely need or because of the unique opportunity that you have in front of them. And I hope that you don't let fairness limit the chance to really make an impact in somebody's life. Number 4, I could have set up a confession booth in our commons area for people who have given teachers lame gifts. I mean, I'm not a priest. You don't have to confess to me. It's okay. But I mean, person after person, they're like, I'm sorry. It's okay. It's okay. So the best part of this for me, of course, is to know that it provoked something. Because unless it provokes something and that today's provoked something and next week's provoked something, then we're just going to have the same Christmas as before. But we have a vision for something broader than that, the best Christmas ever. And I'm confident through the conversations last week that Christmases can be different. They can be better. They might even be able to be the best ever. And so let me come back to the question we started with last week. What makes anything better? You've heard this phrase, it was the best summer ever. It was the best weekend ever. It was the best party ever. It was the best, right? Well, what makes something the best ever? Here's our answer for it. It is always, first, who you share it with. The people, the faces, the relationships that you share it with make it either great or not great. You've never been in a place where you felt isolated and it was the best ever. Actually, what happens is you feel engaged and it becomes the best ever. So you get to choose the people that you give gifts to and the people that you share this season with. It's a powerful choice that you get to make. The second part of that, though, is how you share it. If you just share it with the same people or with a group of people that you like, but you don't do something unique in the expression of it, then it will be the same Christmas again. And I'm suggesting to you that usually in order to make something the best ever, you'll have to change it up a little bit. You'll have to push the envelope. You'll have to take a risk. You might have to put yourself in a position where you're going to try something and it might fail. It could totally blow up in your face. But it also could result in something very meaningful, very powerful, very memorable. It is this decision that life is on the other side of awkward. And to say, you know what, it doesn't have to be the same as last year. I don't have to live in a rut. I can think of the group of people I want to share it with, and this is how I want to share it. So that's very important. But here's the other thing that I want to share with you this week. What makes something the best Christmas ever, or anything the best ever? It's this, that we have real power. We have real power to shape this Christmas. Now, this is part of the interesting conversation with me. One of the things I find when I talk with people all the time, maybe you feel like this, is that you feel like life kind of happens to you. Like there is so much in your life that's out of your control, that is not within your power. And I want to acknowledge that many, many times that is the truth. There's lots of things you don't get to choose. You didn't get to choose your parents. You don't get to choose your family. That's who they are. You didn't get to choose maybe your leaders. Maybe the person you voted for didn't win. You're having an experience with someone that wasn't your choice. Maybe you're in a setting where you think, oh, pretty much all of life, all this brokenness in this world that we talk about, is me dealing with the collateral damage of terrible choices that people around me are making, but I'm the one who deals with them. That is a true story, actually. That's the story Jesus said that you would live. That in this world, you will have trouble. And there's no way to eliminate that. So there are many places in your life where you do not have power. But what I'm suggesting to you today is that there are plenty of places in your life where you do have power, and you actually have complete control, complete power over how you're going to navigate this Christmas. You have the power to do that with gift giving, as we talked about last week. You have the power to decide who am I going to share gifts with and how am I going to share it with them. You have that power. And today we're going to talk about the notion of quality time. And I think if your relationships are going to thrive in this Christmas season, it will probably come because you've taken the time you're spending with people and ensured that it was marked with quality. So I need you to participate with me a little bit again, okay? Here's my questions. I think most of us will be in the same place in this. How many of you have at least one family gathering that you're going to be at this Christmas? Help me out. Show of hands. Okay, almost all of us. You could probably tell your stories. I could tell my stories. We have multiple family gatherings that we'll go to the week after Christmas. It'll be with Jenny's parents, Jenny's dad's family, and then Jenny's mom's family, and my family. Some of those are small. The Lee family likes to keep it just us. Like if you're not related to us, you could just stay home. That's kind of how the Lee family celebrates Christmas. Jenny's family, her maiden name was Royalty. Have I ever told you this? I totally should have taken her name instead of asking her to take mine. But anyway, the Royalty family, it is a raucous Christmas where everybody's invited. They try to set a record every year, and this year they're anticipating 67 people at Jenny's parents' house for the celebration. About 20 of those are going to be 5 years and younger. Now, this is the nature of our celebrations, right? We will get together with people. You will spend time with people. The question isn't whether you'll spend time. The question is whether you will spend quality time with them. How many of you, help me out, show of hands here, how many of you will go to a Christmas party for the place that you work? Okay, about half of us. I'll go to a couple of those, including the place where I work. We have our Christmas party around here after Christmas because it's crazy every December around here. But we'll gather and I think, well, you're going to spend time. So you're going to spend time with your coworkers. And some of you dread that, and some of you love that. And some of you are like, I'm not sure I should be in this environment. And I'm pretty sure that when I show up to Jenny's company Christmas party, some of them are wishing, oh, great, the pastor's here. Wish that wasn't happening. We'll keep some things in the basement. We'll keep some things upstairs. That's just how it works. I think I'm supposed to stay upstairs. I think that's how it's supposed to work at Jenny's Christmas party. But you're going to be in these environments and you'll have time. The question is whether you'll have quality time. And this is what I want you to think about, that when you're at family gatherings, when you're at your company Christmas party, when you're gathered for Christmas morning, maybe with your immediate family or whoever you do that with, will it be uniquely meaningful this year? Will there be conversations that you decide to engage in that you've taken a pass on in the past, but you're going to go there this Christmas? Will someone feel included because you walked across the room to where they were standing or sitting alone and you engaged them? And someone gets to feel that this Christmas? What if we thought about the time we have and the faces we could engage in meaningful, quality ways with our time? I'm suggesting to you that you have power to decide how you'll engage those relationships. I'm going to name 3 things over the course of the message that you have power over and give you some ways to think about this. It's interesting to me. Maybe, I don't know if this was the right way to phrase it, but I wrote the first one like this. We choose the chaos. We choose the chaos. We choose the level of chaos that we're willing to engage. Isn't it interesting that Christmas is oftentimes a very chaotic experience for all of us, and yet when Jesus' birth was announced, one of the images of him was that he was to be the Prince of Peace. And I think, do you experience that? The peace of Christmas? If instead you just have this chaotic experience, what if you realized you have the power over that? I was talking to one of my friends earlier this week about this very message, and I said, hey, tell me what your Christmas is going to be like. And he kind of rolled his eyes like, oh, in our family it's awful because, my wife and I, we go from here to here to here to here, and we're running all over the place. We have to be at her family, my mom's family, my dad's family. Sometimes we end up 3 places all in one day. Have you ever had that experience? Jenny and I had that experience. Our parents live a very short distance from one another, which is great. We have these traditions where, every Christmas we go back there, but we bounce from house to house. And I got to tell you, in the early years of our marriage, and some of you are young marrieds, our biggest fights were about when and where we were going to celebrate the holidays. About who was going to get this amount of time, about whether we were going to leave at this time or not at that time. And it didn't go away on its own. And I was remembering those fights when I was talking to this guy. He's a young married guy himself. And I said, do you have to do all those things? He said, yeah, I have to do all those things. That's what mom and dad, grandma expect. And so I said, I like to do this. I said, so do you have to do those things? Do you have to do those things? See, actually, this is the power that you and I have when we think about, how do I want Christmas to go this year? We get to choose the chaos. We get to choose whether we step into or step back from certain things. I know some of you are a little bit nervous right now because you are the grandparent. And you're like, Greg, are you telling my kids they don't have to come to my house for Christmas? I might be telling them that. I might be telling you that you need to go to your parents' house this Christmas. I might be telling you, if you're a parent, that you should go to your kids' house this. I'm just telling you that you get to choose the chaos. See, there's so much wisdom in the scriptures. Get this from the book of Proverbs. It says, like a city whose walls are broken through is a person who lacks self-control. For some of you, that's the story of your Christmas. It's the story of your life. You feel like, man, my life, it's like a city that the walls have been broken through. Like I'm doing what everyone else wants me to do. They're controlling everything. And it says, well, the people who experience life like that are the people who lack self-control. And so what self-control is the choice to say you choose the chaos, you choose the peace. I actually really want to encourage you to make sure you spend time. If you have living parents, living grandparents, try your best not to pass on that this season. But it is possible, and you should regard this as an option to say, I don't have to spend 2.5 hours in 4 different places on Christmas Day. I can figure out how to show up there on January 15th or February 2nd so that I can actually create space for quality time. That's the goal. Our families try to create some of these traditions. It's kind of weird, right? Because I'm a pastor and I'm working every December 24th, and I mean every December 24th. For 22 years in a row, I have left after our last Christmas Eve service and done the drive for 5 hours back to our hometown so that we can wake up there on Christmas morning. But I think, man, you gotta make that work for you somehow. One of the ways I make it work for me is that the roads are empty on Christmas Eve, so I make it in 4 hours instead of 5 hours. On multiple times, I've looked in my rearview mirror and thought I saw Christmas lights. Multiple times, and I realized those aren't Christmas lights. I'm being pulled over right now. But never have I actually gotten a ticket on Christmas Eve. I think they're looking for drunk drivers. I'm usually in the clear. I'm always in the clear. Did I just say usually? I am always in the clear on that. That's not in my notes anyway. Your family gets to choose your traditions. We like to wake up at Grandma and Grandpa's house on Christmas morning. You know why? Because at our house, Santa comes a day early. It's a special privilege for pastors. I don't know if you know that. My kids know that. So our family chooses to have our quality time the morning of Christmas Eve. I'm just suggesting to you, you control the chaos. You get to make the decisions about the pace of this season. And with the right pace, you can open up the opportunity for quality time. But it's not just the chaos that you get to control. You actually get to choose the conversations that you have. When I suggest that quality time engaged with other people will be a factor for you this Christmas, I want to kind of set an image for you about the different kinds of conversations that I imagine are available to you this Christmas. I'm going to list them, and actually if you're following along in the program, this will be important. I'm going to list them from the bottom to the top because the middle is surface level conversations, and I want to see how they get better as we go. So I want to describe these 5 different kinds of conversations, and I really just want to ask you, when you think about your gatherings this Christmas, to very intentionally move at least one step forward in these conversations. What are the kind of conversations you can have? Well, at the bottom of the list is that you can have negative conversations at Christmas. I'm not going to make you raise your hands on this one, but if I did, think about this. How many of you like to gossip when you're together at Christmas? How many of you have ever been in the living room having a conversation with one other person when someone else walked into the living room and you had to stop the conversation because you were talking about the person who walked in the room? This is actually one of the great toxic things that happens at family gatherings and gatherings with friends, is that the nature of our very conversations, not only are they not uplifting, they're actually destructive. You become a person who complains or argues, but the scriptures are quite clear on this. What do they say? They say, do everything without grumbling or arguing. Are you kind of a negative Nelly? Are you a person who huffs and puffs a little bit? Does your spouse need to elbow you right now? We should just move on from this. I looked this up. Yeah, the New Testament is written in the Greek language. I looked up what the word everything means in Greek. It means everything. That's what it means. This is huge. Do everything without complaining or arguing. Any of you going to talk about politics at Christmas dinner? Go for it. If you can do it without complaining or arguing. The negative tone of conversations is something that every Christ follower should take great responsibility for and say, I will not participate. Some of you are thinking right now, Greg, the problem's not me, but I know the person you're talking about at my family gathering, right? I'm going to let you off the hook for just a second. Imagine that it's not you, it's someone else. And you actually can anticipate that, yep, they're going to want to kind of corner you this Christmas and talk about someone. And I'm actually suggesting to you that you reach out to them before Christmas and call that conversation off. To reach out to them and say, hey, I'm looking forward to being with you this Christmas. You know, sometimes when we talk, we end up talking about other people. Just so you know, I'm not going to do that this year. Can you imagine yourself having that conversation? It could be powerful. There's negative conversations. Then there's the notion that we just avoid conversations. And avoidance happens in all kinds of ways. Some of you are so busy getting Christmas dinner together that you actually miss out on the conversations. Jesus had an experience like this with Mary and Martha. And Jesus has great clarity about what the value is in these moments versus when you take something that makes something beautiful or focuses on activity versus sitting down and engaging someone. He says, sit down and engage someone every single time. Sometimes the avoidance is intentional. You just have 2 or 3 people in your family that you don't want to talk to. I'm suggesting, what if you talk to them this year? Many times in 2018, the nature of avoidance has to do with having a smartphone in your hand. And scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. Don't you hate people who complain about people on their phones? Does it sound like I'm doing that right now? I just think you can have the lamest Christmas ever. If you spend the afternoon scrolling through your phone, put your phone in your pocket, leave it in the car, engage someone in a conversation. What kind of conversations would you engage them in? Well, there's surface level conversations. That's kind of the middle of this, right? And everyone can engage in surface level conversations. We talk about the weather, or we talk about the Bears, or we talk about whatever's going on in life right now. And that's fine. Surface level conversations are actually very positive places to be if your typical approach is to avoid conversations, or if you've been a part of negative conversations. But surface level conversations, by their very nature, aren't exactly meaningful. Nobody's going to have the best Christmas ever because they engaged in lots of surface level conversations. And so I'm curious what it would look like for your conversations to be marked with curiosity. With curiosity. I met with a family today who's going to lay their father to rest on Saturday. And this always strikes me whenever I have the chance to do somebody's funeral. There are people who are just loved uniquely when they pass from this life to the next. I mean, they're just loved overwhelmingly by almost everyone. And sometimes when I'll do people's funerals, they think, oh, like there's some secret to that. Like, why would someone be loved that much? I can tell you what the secret is, because it's not a secret. The people who are the most loved in this world are the people who are the most curious. Because when they were together with you, instead of talking about themselves, they talked about you. And you experienced that as love. You know what most people's favorite topic of conversation is, right? It's ourselves. And if you become the person who says, instead of talking about myself, instead of hearing someone tell a story, there's some bit of that story that matches the story that you have, so you jump in next with your story, you step back and you ask some meaningful questions. You take a curious posture. You sit down and look somebody in the eye and ask meaningful questions about their life, about what's going on for them. It can move everything. See, the scriptures teach a follower of Jesus to live in the way of Jesus, which of course was to put others first, and that's the principle here. Here's what the scriptures say. Rather, in humility, value one another, others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. And if you just kind of make yourself a note Christmas morning or whenever you're going to your gathering to say, you know what, I'm not going to talk about myself. I'm going to ask questions and listen so that my nephew or my cousin or my mom can tell me about them. If you think about a few people that you'll encounter at these gatherings ahead of time, maybe someone who's older than you, who has experience in life at the stage that you're at, maybe you could go and ask for some wisdom or for some advice. If there's someone in your family who's raised kids before and now you're raising kids and you think, I'm not sure I'm perfect at this, maybe you could seek with some curiosity a rich conversation with an uncle or a grandmother. Curious conversations. Every one of us could do this. And then there's a level of a conversation that is spiritual. Spiritual. It goes beyond just sage advice and curiosity and engagement and putting the other first. It actually leads us to a place that says, hey, we're celebrating an event that is central to my faith. I wonder how in the most positive and winsome and encouraging ways to the people around me, I could lead conversations that are spiritual. For some of you, that's to make sure that at your gathering this year when you stop before the meal, that you say, you know what? Maybe you don't normally pray, but you're going to pray this year. Maybe you wouldn't normally pause to read Luke chapter 2 and the story of Christ's birth, but this year you are. And you'll have a family gathered who hear the story of Christ coming. I'm not asking you to shove this down anybody's throat. Quite the opposite. The advice that we get from the Apostle Paul when he encourages us to engage these conversations goes something like this. It says, devote yourselves to prayer. Be watchful and thankful. To pray for some people before you gather, to whisper a little prayer to God, to open up a door for a conversation, that would be a healthy way to mark this Christmas. To watch someone else, to be grateful for them and express that, that's all spiritual. It says, be wise in the way you act toward outsiders. Make the most of every opportunity that's in front of you. Let your conversation always, always be full of grace and seasoned with salt. For many of you, these spiritual conversations can be this simple. You can be in a conversation with someone, maybe about something meaningful, maybe about something tough that's going on in their life. Maybe for them it's been the worst year ever. And you just say to them, can I pray for you? And then if you're bold enough, you could actually pray for them right then and there. I've never had anyone tell me no to the offer to pray with them. Maybe you don't pray with them right there, but you make a note that you will pray for them, and then you follow up a week later with a text to tell them that you've been praying for them. The notion that you would engage the God of the universe, who you believe has power in everyone's life, in a meaningful way, that's what takes something from being just time to quality time. And so I want you to think about these gatherings that you're out, whether it's with the very household that you live in every day when you're together Christmas morning, or maybe it's with an extended family or a company Christmas party. From negative to avoidance to curiosity to surface to curiosity to spiritual. Where do you normally sit on that and move it one notch forward? Let me give you one other thing to think about that you get to choose. We get to choose the crowd that we engage. Now, when I say the crowd, of course, you'll be in all these different gatherings, but one of the things I want you to think about in advance of going into these crowds is that there are people within the crowd. Actually, quality time doesn't usually happen when you're trying to talk to 20 people at once, but if you can get one or two people off to the side, you can have meaningful conversations. And it would be even worth thinking a little bit in advance in terms of two categories of people who you might move these conversations with. Let me give you those categories and encourage you to engage that this year. First is the people you want to gain something from. There's a person with wisdom. There's a person with experience. There's a person with joy. There's a person, you see someone. And actually, maybe the very first thing that can come out of your mouth when you look at someone like that and you thought, yeah, that's the person this year, you can say, you know what, I see this in you. Tell me about that. And you can sit and learn and soak, and your experience this Christmas can be a richer experience because you asked someone to invest in you, and they did. Of course, the other group of people is someone that you want to give something to. And I can't fill in those blanks for you. I don't know who the people are in your life who you could gain something from, or you think, you know what, they've had a rough year this year. I want to give something to them. Not a tangible gift, but a word of encouragement, a time and presence, prayers for them. I want to think of this Christmas in terms that when I walk away from those gatherings, I will have had the chance to gain something from and give something to the people who I believe God has placed in your path this Christmas. Can I pray for that right now? Father, we thank you for your goodness to us. My prayer, God, is that when we think about making this Christmas unique, it is because of the people that we get to share it with. And that we would just determine for ourselves that we will share it in a way that's unique, perhaps risky, certainly meaningful. I pray this in the name of Jesus.